Good morning, everybody. I think we'll get started to stay right on schedule. I've noticed how many questions come in each session, so we better be starting on time. So this panel, as you can read here, we're going to talk about CMMC, about ISO 27001, and any other exciting standards that might be relevant in this context. So on the far right of me, on the far left of you, we have one of the many smarty pants in the room. I feel a very basic person suddenly. I thought a master's degree meant something, but these are all doctors and whatever. So that's Adrian Davis from the UK, and 20 or so years in cyber and information security as a consultant and practitioner. Managing director for the EMEA region in the past, and also CISO and CIO, and visiting lecturer, visiting professor in the UK and the Netherlands. That's a tough crowd, the Netherlands. Tell you what, you can't impress these people. Fellow of the British Computer Society, CISSP, and also holds an MBA. So please welcome Adrian over there. And then we have Michael Raison. He's from Belgium, and the lucky inhabitant of this beautiful city of Brussels. And he is a lead implementer and auditor for ISO 27001, also CDPO and cybersecurity manager. Consultant for Approach, a pure player in the cybersecurity. I love this description, so we shall see how you are on the panel. 20 years experience in management roles, lead auditor and coaching for cybersecurity. Currently the head of compliance and risk and the CISO for companies in the defense sector. So that's why the CMMC part comes in perhaps as well. That's going to be very interesting to hear. And some people call him the Mr. CMMC Belgium. I'm going to call you Mr. CMMC Global. I'm going to call you very soon, I think. So give it up for Michael. And then we have Dr. Roman Krepke from Germany. So it's a very international crowd we've got here. So I study computer science in Berlin in the past, also doctor in AI, artificial intelligence, and neural algorithmics. And 6 years with Accenture in the past as a security consultant for governance, data protection, and business continuity management. 9 years with Bosch as an InfoSec and data protection officer. Now with Mazars, an international auditing and consulting firm, and responsible for InfoSec governance, DP, data protection, risk management, and business continuity. And PCB certifications include DPO 27K, lead auditor, and 27002, etc., CMSA, and trainer. So also, please put your hands together for Roman, for Dr. Roman. And my name is Rinske. You probably heard me say a few things here and there, and I'll be facilitating this panel. Like I said, I'm glad that the smarty pants are all sitting on my right, and I can just ask questions and facilitate. And I'm all the way from Australia here, so hopefully you guys are going to enjoy it. We are courageous enough to say you can all ask questions, not comments and stories and your own panel discussions over there, but actual questions. If they're relevant to the discussion, absolutely, we'd love to hear them, because it also will create a better experience for everybody. What might be in your head as a question might be in everybody's head, and so let's be open and go with the flow with that one. And I'm Dutch enough to, originally from Holland, so I can also shut everybody up very successfully. That's what you do, a very direct Dutch way, you know. So all those. So let's get started. I wanted to first ask if perhaps Roman, if you can please get started and talk a little bit about your intro into the topic. We'll do a sort of a 3-minute intro initially. So if you want to do that.
Thank you, Rinske. And just for the reason of change from the last session, from the last panel session to this panel session, we've spoken about 27001. But what is the 27,000 family in total? And often my customers ask me, Roman, would you like to certify us according to 27,000? And I say, yes, that would be great. 27,000 is just a glossary. So you just need to introduce the glossary into your organization, then you're certified. Yeah? So nobody will give, no accredited certification body will give you a paper, but we as Mazar, we are able to print you a paper that you are 27,000, according to glossary, certified. Yeah? That would be easy. But the main point is you can get certified to 27001, and these are the requirements. This is what it should be in the organization. How you're going to do this in the organization is not stated in there. So therefore you have a 27002 and 27003. The 27002 gives you an instruction on what to do in order to get certified, and 27003 gives you an impression about how to do what in order to get the requirements in the organization. And then you have plenty of other things like how you want to measure in 27004. And then you have a clue in how you're going to make the risk management in 27005. And all the other stuff for auditing and organizations and issuing certificates in 6 and 7 and 8, etc. And all the other, and now it comes in more, we get in more detail. If you are in a certain branch or a certain section, there are additional standards in the 20,000 family in there which you also need to take care about. For example, if you're processing personal data, let's see about 27701. If you're keen about implementing good business continuity management, let's see into the 22301.
It's not quite 27, but it's 22. Well, there's also 22317, all a bunch of things, yeah, exactly. And they have linkage. Yeah.
And there's exactly a linkage. And in order to exactly now to finalize a wrap up from the previous session, the question was how the change in 27002 will impact 27001. It has already impacted, so the question was already obsolete, but just giving you an impression about what happened. Almost nothing. From my point of view, the main part of the main body of the standard just received technical, some technical updates or some wordings, which have been already understood as such by the most of the organization, by the most of the auditors and certification bodies. They just given it, or they just printed it into the or brought it on paper. But they did a tremendous change in the structure, especially in the annex, in the Annex A. So there are 11 new controls. These controls have already been implemented in the most organizations already. And but majorly they reorganized it, what I call, in the past, I had 14 buckets or 14 boxes where I had my few controls in that, and if I wanted to speak to the HR person in an audit or in a consultancy project, then I said, okay, I have a bucket HR, and I want to speak to your HR security responsible, to your HR person. And I found one, and we had a short session, 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and then we are ready. And then I said, okay, all other sections, don't bother you, I will speak to other people. The same with all other 14 buckets. Now we have what I call, and sorry for the wording, 4 waste bins. So you know the big waste bins which are on the streets on the day when the waste is picked up. I have 4 big waste bins, organizational, people, physical and technical, and now I have to dig into this waste bins. So what would be the solution? What would be, from my point of view, there is one additional level of organization, of a structural level missing between these 4 big buckets and my 14 bins. Maybe this will not be the 14 bins, maybe they will be 20 or 25, whatever. But I think there is one additional level missing, and I'm very excited to look onto what would happen next to the maybe a minor revision to the 27001 Annex A or 27002 in future. Thanks. But I don't want to take all the time. We still have other participants.
I almost started to become very Dutch. No. That's a very good summary, because in the previous session we didn't talk too much about it. We started more throwing, comments, and was almost riots happening. That was really good as well. But the mechanics are really important as well. So thank you for giving that update. Michael, do you want to talk a little bit about CMMC? That's a bit of a mystery. Who knows actually what CMMC actually is all about? Not just that it exists, but actually what the nuts and bolts are. See, there's less than probably a third of the people here. So fire away.
And I don't know if people are coming from the defense sector here in the room, but if not, maybe most of you do not know the details about CMMC. I've been doing CMMC projects for 4 or 5 years, mainly in the defense sector here in Belgium. The idea is that while ISO 27 is a standard, CMMC is a regulation that is based on a standard, a NIST standard, but this is a regulation that has been sent out by the US DOD in 2020. So the challenge is quite good. I have been part of many activities in that sector. I'm the one telling you that you should not display too much your activities, like people take photos of their salad and put it on Twitter. But in the end, we know the defense sector quite well. And the idea is, this is coming from the United States Department of Defense, and this will have a big impact on our industry and companies today, because day after day, there is a close relationship between the defense and the rest. We have seen the NIST directive, critical infrastructure, and all the industry and the economy are serving the Department of Defense. If you have the technical package that has been sent out the 9th of November, few days ago, there is the mobility package. When you transfer the troops, you rely on transport, you rely on telecommunication, you rely on many people coming from all our world. If you want to develop the curtain that is in the tank in the end, the curtain should be certified CMMC. That's the story. And everybody serves the defense in the end. So this is a long journey, CMMC, and it is out since 2020, the regulation. I've been working for 4 years, and that even if the regulation was only out in 2020. Why? Because they were already working on that with the NIST framework. And in the end, the regulation just defines that the standard baseline for cybersecurity should be that NIST version, depending on your level of dependence and your level of data exchange with the defense. So should you be ready for CMMC? It depends on your relationship to the defense today, but in the end, at the end of the journey, everybody will be involved. So maybe let me express what's inside the CMMC. And CMMC, there is an accreditation body in the US, which is named CMMC AB, CMMC accreditation body. They already renamed themselves. Now it's Cyber AB. So it's not only about CMMC, the defense regulation, it's about the industry standards. And the flow down in the contracts to the other people involved, even not in the US. And if you follow the NIST directive, it's the same way, the same journey that will happen. In the end, it's for the important entities, the essential operators, but it will be flowed down to everybody, and everybody will have to achieve that baseline. So what's inside the CMMC? It's about a maturity model. They do not ask, because this is defense, to put you to the highest level of cybersecurity. This is not the purpose of CMMC. The US Department of Defense have understood that they had about 150 regulations. The privacy regulations, the public market regulations, the finance regulation, the NATO confidential regulation, so many of them, all specifying what levels of cybersecurity you need to achieve. But those regulations had no precise outcome in cybersecurity. Those were just the chapters, the final chapters of those regulations, each of them doing it a different manner. What they have decided is to group all of them. You still need to respond to all the regulation, but they have defined a standard, a baseline, the NIST 800 series standard that you need to follow. If you have that standard, you will comply to the baseline of each regulation. If you're not standard, you comply to none of the regulation. And I'm pretty sure that any of the companies you are working on are really linked to at least one of those regulations. And this is where you are in. Just because this is a standard baseline, the baseline is not easy to achieve, but the baseline is something quite simple. And when you implement CMMC, you should not go too high. It is not about being top secret with the highest level of encryption. It depends on the activity you make. But you should go to the baseline and think about standardization. This is what CMMC is. Of course, like in ISO 27, you have chapters, you have a lot of domains. They are the same: access control, asset management, audit, awareness, identification, authentication, incident response. It's the same chapter naming convention. So if you develop one, and we have discussed that the days before, match your standards together, and the man on the right will probably discuss that further in the discussion. You need to do it one time. Be compliant to all of them. So in the end, this is about cyber hygiene. In good faith, it has been defined by the US Department of Defense. It will be defined by NIST. In the end, it's the same. You have to do it. So if you want to be in advance, get a market advantage and so on, if you're not standard, you will not get business anymore. That's a little bit the story about CMMC. I will not discuss too much the timeline of NIS, but there is a strong link with that, and in the end they will join together their baseline. The CMMC, the industry, the NIS, everybody will go the same way.
Michael, I believe you made a strong link to the NIST way. Just let me make a strong link between the ISO and the CMMC. Also in ISO, in many of my clients, they ask me, please tell me how mature our ISMS is. We want to comply to ISO. We are a European or whatever, a German company. We don't want to go to US. So NIST is not really of interest for our company. Yeah? Tell me how mature is our ISMS based on ISO. And here is what I can take from CMMC, the capability maturity model, and to go each and every chapter, each and every control, and to say, do you make plan, do you make do you make check and act? And based on this, how you do this, we can calculate the maturity model for your ISMS, and tell you that in that area, that special area, you are good, you are mature, according to CMMC, and in the other areas you have to improve a little bit. Also helps the customers to identify whether they should go to the audit or to the certification audit or not. Yeah? This is a link between.
I have
I
one
think-
quick, sorry.
I was going to say, actually, that's one of the key things that I'm not sure this title works for me, actually, because CMMC is a maturity model, as has been brilliantly pointed out. ISO is a management system. It is not comparable. They do different things. They have different focus points. They have other perspectives. And one of the things I did, and I know CMMC very well, because I was actually creating a maturity model for a Middle Eastern government to cover 400 of their companies and departments using CMMC version 1 when the American government cancelled it last year and replaced it with version 2. And one of the things that really came out during our development process was they wanted to, well, the government were a bit US focused. They wanted a bit of NIST, but they wanted a bit of ISO because they wanted to bridge the gap to work with Europeans, and they wanted to measure how good they were at doing things. They wanted to understand how mature they were. And one of the things that we actually found was that there is no one perfect framework. And it's a bit like the ISO discussion before the break. Nothing is perfect because it's created by human beings, and it's created by human beings to answer particular problems. And when we talk about our framework discussion, by the way, I've got to cover the rest of the world. They get ISO and CMMC, and I've got to do everybody else in 2 minutes. So I'm going to do it really simple. It's a mess. There's a lot of good stuff out there, but there are various camps that you can identify. There are various types of framework that are now starting to become more and more globally accepted. 27001 is an obvious case in point, but when you go to America, it's not invented there, and the Americans don't like stuff they don't invent. So they have their own version, which is NIST. And there's nothing wrong with NIST CSF. That's the Cybersecurity Framework. I'm sure you've all seen it. I think it's got some clever ideas in it, I have to say. But there's the American version, which is the Cybersecurity Framework, which is much more action-oriented, you could argue. So ISO is very much management, plan, do, check, act, or observe, orient, whatever they are now.
Identify, detect, protect.
Exactly. Look, they're all based on the same cycle, right? Anyone ever heard of Colonel John Boyd? Really? Right, Colonel John Boyd was a fighter race in World War II and the Korean War. And he was trying to work out why American pilots were so much better than their adversaries. And he boiled it down to something called the OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. Everything we talk about on plan, do, check, act is based on 1950s, 1960s fighter pilot analysis. So you can all go home and claim you're an ace. But that's where it comes from. That's a lot of our approaches come from that. And what we see, and I'm sticking to the frameworks here, this is a deliberate move off to come back. A lot of the frameworks we see from Europe are very management oriented. A lot of the American frameworks tend to be much more get in the weeds, get things done. And CMMC has that as well, that they look for you to get to a level and then you've got to have that progression to the next. So to summarize, for my part, there are several things you should be looking out for on a global scale. NIST CSF, because everyone likes it, everyone talks about it. But then go start digging around. There's C2M2, which is the maturity model used by the energy industry in the States, over in Australia, and various other countries. And that's their cybersecurity maturity model for energy. There's also several that come out in the finance industry. So for example, over in Saudi Arabia, what used to be called SAMA, Saudi Arabian Monetary Authority, is now the Saudi Central Bank. Everyone still calls it SAMA, even the website says SAMA. They have the Cybersecurity Framework, which is kind of a bit ISO-like and kind of a bit NIST-like. It's a bit of a happy merging. Sorry? No, the SAMA Cybersecurity Framework is from SAMA. NCA have published the Essential Cybersecurity Controls and the CSCC and the DC. Yeah, don't worry, we can do the abbreviations later. Well remembered. So what we're seeing, though, is we're seeing a lot of different frameworks being produced globally, some by very large and very established international, national regulators or organizations, but then there's a lot of other things that are either sector-driven or even nationally driven that fit particular requirements of those sectors or nations. That's why I said it's a mess, but actually it's a really interesting mess, because a lot of approaches you can learn from.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you. Talking about mess, when it really goes bad, well, they call you Mr. CMMC of the world. They tend to call me Miss Business Continuity of the world. When we look at those standards, because I know the 27001 links very heavily with business continuity, where there's a section in there, you can't really do one without the other. Is that the same with CMMC and some of the other standards you mentioned for you guys, from your perspective?
Definitely, it's always the same story, to my point of view.
Yeah, not just incident management, but also actually having plans from the business side to look at?
Where I see differences between CMMC and ISO, for instance, ISO focuses on the governance. There is a strong technical centric part, which is the same on roughly all frameworks, because we are all dependent to the technology. And in the end, we have the same IT stuff or OT stuff in front of us. But on the ISO, we have more governance stuff, while on the CMMC, they focus on the sensitive data. They focus on the CUI. It's not classified information. It's controlled, but unclassified information. And we still need to protect them. So we need, what they ask in that data flow part is to document the data flow. You get a CUI, you need to mark it an intelligent manner, so you do not have a policeman next to each file. And then you need to control the flow when it comes out, when it moves inside the company, and you need records management, you need encryption, but strongly on the CUI part, not on the rest. So data flows are more on the CMMC. This is the flavor. There is more governance and leadership and so on the ISO, but it's the same story in the end.
Just to help you out, CUI is one of the weirdest things I've ever come across, because it's information that's really, really important, but isn't necessarily classified, but defense contractors need to share. You try to work out how to put a rubber stamp on that piece of paper. It's really difficult because they never actually tell you.
That's it. And there are 3 or 4 regulators on their side, and nobody will answer. The DTTC, the government, nobody will tell you if your document. So some documents will be stamped in the end. This is also about the standardization. Today, if you have privacy, limited distribution and other stuff, there are so many regulations putting different stamps. The goal of CMMC is to standardize them. In the end, at the beginning, in the end of the document, you will have CUI. And then you need to understand why this is a CUI. Because, okay, it's a sensitive data, I should not share with anybody, but why? Can I share it with my commercial team, with my HR team? Okay, it's privacy, then I can share it with my HR team and not the commercial team. Okay, it's finance stuff, it's reverse. My HR team should not see the financial information, but can see that's the story. It's standardization, making something clear in something that is totally a mess.
Yes. Actually, asking this question, Rinske, is coming back to the question which was discussed in the previous panel from my point of view, is if an organization is certified according to 27001, does that mean that organization is secure? And I'm not a lawyer, but now I have to use the response which lawyers standardly give.
Go on, then we can all do it together.
It depends.
It depends.
Yeah? It depends.
Ask my insurance company.
Because why?
You have
Why-
cyber insurance?
Why does it depend? Because ISO 27001 is not a technical standard. It's a standard for managing a system of information security. In a similar way, you all know probably 27701 for data protection, for data privacy. Yeah? If you are compliant and certified according to 27701, are you compliant to GDPR? No. Because you have GDPR requirements which you have to comply, and the standard 27701 just says you how to manage all that documentation and the governance and the organizations and the procedures and processes and people and controls. It's just the management of all that stuff. It's creating a bin, yeah, where you can put it into some boxes, yeah, how to find it. But it does not say you that you are compliant with GDPR. Similar stuff with 27001, yeah. If you have the certificate, then it certifies you can manage your security. Yeah? What your security is, who knows? Yeah? And this is what NIST, and this is what CMMC, and this is what other technical standards do propose and do imply to implement that security, which you will manage by using 27001.
It all comes back to a risk-based approach. And if you have labeled it as low risk, well, are you 100% secure? No, but you just accepted the risk. So that's what's part of that philosophy. Yeah, and maybe there's no other way, of course. We don't have unlimited budgets, except the central banks, they print the money, but that's about it. That's the only ones I've ever spoken to. They say, we don't care about the likelihood. If there's an impact, we'll fix it, you know? So, yeah. I wanted to maybe start with Roman. Talk a little bit about a couple of questions that we had in mind, some pitfalls when implementing these processes or frameworks, and also what would be your key point of difference or your key advice on maybe getting some better results. Would we be able to start with you?
Interesting question. What I have been auditing in the last month, a company where the CEO of the company did not attend the opening meeting, did not attend any of the discussions, did not attend the closing meeting. I met him once. I met him once on the floor when going around making surveys, and shake him the hand, and he said, "Good luck with my stuff, guys. I hope on a good result." Okay. So the lack of management attention is one very important point. So if that was an exception. Truly, that was an exception. And in many cases, I see the top management sitting the entire days, all the days in the audit and taking active part in that. That's good. And another pitfall is what I've seen in other. Actually I've heard this before, but as a joke. Yeah? And a couple of months ago, I met a company where they said, "Oh, we are just a semi-virtual company. We are renting all our buildings, and we have outsourced our data center, so we don't do anything on that." And I asked, "Okay, you outsource your data center. Okay, are there servers and racks?" Yes, of course, there is one big rack and a lot of servers, but it's all managed by our landlord as a service provider. Okay, a landlord who is renting a data center and a rack and a server, is he ISO 27001 certified? Can we clearly, bureaucratically expand them or extract him from the scope? No. The landlord is not 27001 certified, and yeah, let's see the data center. Yeah? We went to, you know, there are several floors, and between the floors there are some stages in between, and there is a door in between the stores, and I see the door, there is a handle on the door. Strange, okay, data center. I just pull the handle, and the door gets open. Oh, incredible. The door was just a simple wooden door. You know, the toilet door in my house is thicker. Okay.
There are other
We
risks.
wonder
Too
why.
much information. Too much information. Let's move on quickly.
I'm not paranoid. But then I seen that's a cleaning room. Where is the servers? Where is the racks? He said, oh, just behind the door. But that's a cleaning room. We have how you say this?
Chemicals and all that stuff.
No, the chemicals and there is a water tap and there are some bins in between. And I say, okay, you can get some water, put it into something and throw it into the neighboring rack. And the manager said, oh, but this never happened. Not yet. But maybe I make a penetration test now. Not really. So and then I ask, okay, why the door is still open? And he said, oh, our landlord says the servers are getting hot sometimes, and they need to open the door to for the ventilation. I thought it's a joke. It was reality. After some months of consultancy work, we get this party certified, and they got another server room in another building, farly away, and really outsourced to a 27001 certified party, which has been.
And you tick the supplier relationship box and all that stuff in there.
And
in the
in the
spreadsheet.
end, I had the same story of the door, but because the airco was broken. And it is.
Yeah, it was a business continuity measure, yeah?
yeah. Michael, any pitfalls from your side?
Yes, of course. And I think we are sitting between you and the lunchtime, so I will continue with interesting stories, otherwise you will leave the place. It's about motivation from the management. Even when you have the good CEO, the CEO in place, you know the difference between the good CEO and the bad CEO. The good CEO is in the cybersecurity meeting and is a good CEO, and the bad CEO is in the cybersecurity meeting and is a bad CEO. And the true difference is about the motivation they have. They can have good or bad motivation. It's New Year's Eve. They decide we will do cybersecurity in 2023. What are their motivation? Generally, in the end, okay, we have an audit. I need to pass it. I need to be certified. Or during Christmas, we have been hacked. I'm total panic mode. Now I need cybersecurity. But maybe those are not enough sufficient motivation. You know, you need to boost up your cybersecurity posture with estrogen or testosterone, whatever. But you need to boost it. This is very important. And the importance here is, I will tell you a small story about password complexity. You know password complexity. Password need to be complex. You should not reuse your passwords. This is important. And then the bad CEO goes, okay, I have no money. I will Google that. And I have found a fine tutorial, and I will send it out to my colleagues. And case closed. And the tutorial says, okay, you just need to take your favorite song or your favorite weird sentence and use it as a password. My sentence is, the platypus is in the bus. Okay, this is good. Platypus is a complex word, and I can even win Scrabble with that. It's not in all dictionaries, and that's my strong password ever, and I will use that. And in the end, case closed. I have achieved, tick the box. Now I have a password management system. But in the end, that does not work at all. Why? I'm a user. I have 50 passwords, 50 sentences. After 1 year, I need to create a new one.
3 months.
I have forgotten my password. What do? I call the hotline. This is cost, this is time. And then, after 5 years, I change my company, all the passwords are in my brain. Platypus is in the bus. Okay, I share it with you? No, because I don't know. Can I share it, and with whom? I have a colleague, I'm on sickness leave. The password is not in the company anymore. Additional costs. I have a contractor who needs the password. Okay, I send him platypus is in the bus. And then in the end, when he comes back, I need to change my password 50 times. Additional cost, non-manageable at all. Final point, and this one is maybe very important, the darknet. If one of my passwords is breached and published on the dark web, if the password is in my brain, nobody knows that platypus is in the bus is there. I will not be notified. With a good password manager, the password manager will scan the dark web and see that my password has been breached and I should replace it. Even in browser, they have that functionality today. So
I think your point has always been return on investment.
good
with all this.
motivation,
It costs money
precisely,
to
return on
maintain these
investment. Should
controls.
I invest in a password manager? if the CEO becomes a good CEO and has enough an awareness of, in the end, there is a return on investment. The password manager is not a cost. It is revenue in your company. So don't use platypus in the bus because it's my password. You cannot reuse it. and then invest in a password manager that is relevant to your company. Not all the company will have the same. If you need advice on that, ask for advice on that, and do not Google that.
So while you're in your sharing mood, thank you for the password. What's your PIN number?
my
27,001?
Adrian, the interesting part of your perspective that we talked about a little bit was process and culture. Do you want to expand on those concepts a little bit?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm going to just see if I can do the classic password story. This happened to me. My CEO, I was the CISO at the time, he rang me up, and this is the old days of Blackberries. Who remembers Blackberries, right? Yeah. Second was it first marriage, second Blackberry? Or was it first Blackberry, second? Never mind. Anyway, my CEO rang me up, and he said, you've got to make my password on my Blackberry much, much simpler. And I said, why? And he went, I can't type it in when I'm driving. Is that a risk? Yeah, that was one of the interesting password requests I've had in my time.
A CEO with a device is a risk in itself, isn't it?
Well, yeah, exactly. Yes, we won't go there. Anyway, so the thing is, with all the frameworks, and I'm guessing all of you have done frameworks of one kind or another, one version or other in your organizations or as consultants. What I always tend to find is that we know exactly why it's brilliant. We've got a framework, we know that it's going to make our companies much more secure, and then nothing happens. Or we install it and everybody goes, well, I didn't see a change. I didn't see a difference. And the bit I want to talk about really is one of the biggest pitfalls I see is that we as information security go and try and do it all ourselves, and we don't get other people involved. I did a great project a couple of years ago now, just before COVID, about supply chain. And it was a big global company, and they had their weekly Zoom calls probably had more people on the call than we have in this room, from the various cybersecurity and the various territories who were all involved. And for 6 months, they produced the most beautiful process flow information diagrams I've seen in my life. I really wish I could have got a copy for them. I really do. And do you know what happened? Nothing. Not once did they ever get anything put in place. Not once did they change how they work with their supply chain. Nothing. Until I turned up and got very bored one meeting and went, have you actually spoken to anybody in the business yet? Oh no, they said, this is a security matter. This is about the security of our suppliers. Procurement don't need to be involved. Who buys stuff? Tell me, who buys stuff in a company? Normally, big stuff goes through procurement. So one of the big things I think, one of the big pitfalls I see with everything we do in security is not just getting the ROI right and talking and getting the business in at the meeting, but it's actually getting someone in the business to go, this is going to help me, or this is a way that will help me do things better, and if I think it's going to make things better, I will start to adopt it. And I think that's the big thing, is that we put all of our frameworks into little boxes rather than big dumpsters. But the one thing I keep seeing every time when I see failing information security projects or frameworks or grand plans to roll out 27001 is the fact it's always driven by the security guys and girls on their own, and they've never sat down and even tried to talk to the business first. And sometimes you'll never get your lovely framework in place. There are times that I've had some lovely ideas and they've fallen at the first hurdle, but I've managed to get someone in the business involved, and I've managed to get that much done, which means that actually the security of the organization is that better, you know? And I think sometimes we the other thing we think is that if I get a great framework and it's all beautiful and it's got lovely flow charts and lovely governance and everything else, and I stick it on the wall, it will do it all. Look, this is Mr. Framework or Mrs. Framework. She can do everything in the business to do with security and even make tea. That's the other thing I should have put on my 4 bullet points. Drink tea, lots of tea. And we think the framework will do it all. The framework doesn't work without people, it doesn't work without engagement, and it doesn't work without producing something that make people believe they are going to do better.
Which is why I slotted in shamelessly a session this afternoon at 2:30. I said, I love all the schedule, right? What we're seeing here for the last 2 days. Incredible topics, but we're all talking to the converted.
Yeah.
You guys already know all these lessons. They already know your lessons. You know, it's really about getting that buy-in from the top. And it scares people even thinking about it. Walking into a boardroom and actually delivering the benefits of that initiative. So this afternoon, 2:30 is a think tank. Yeah, it's a think tank of best ideas, good protocols, good ideas, good sometimes crazy ideas that just help people to switch on to our topic. And that goes all the way up to the board level. So I really hope you guys all grab that coffee and come back and do that together, you know? It's the most important thing.
It's about benefits. It's like CMMC. CMMC is actually, it's mandatory if you want to work on US Department of Defense contracts. Certain levels are mandatory, aren't they? I seem to remember.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
So if you don't work with US Department of Defense, or you want to work in defense, and your CEO walks in and goes, right, we're going to start doing defense projects, you as a CISO should be putting your hand up and going, did you know we need to be compliant with this? If we do this, we can start bidding for billion-dollar contracts. How many CISOs would ever stand up and say that? Very few. And that's part of the thing, is that we just don't engage, and we think that the paper and the diagrams will do it for us. And I'll go back to the policy discussion, right? What are the 2 most read policies in any organization? Guess. Thank you. Why? How much time do I get off? 90% of people in an organization are just there to work 9 to 5 and go home. Trust me. What's the second most read policy in an organization? Expenses. If I go out and buy myself and my mates a few beers, can I get my money back off the company? How many people have ever read an information security policy? Apart from you, because you've all read them, right? I have a friend whose job, he is a very good consultant. He has written information security policies for like 15 years of his life. He would far rather stick pins in his eyes than read information security policies. He writes them. Do you know how bored you must have to be if you don't want to read them? How many people have ever read an information policy document that you have or your organization has ever written or published?
Not voluntarily.
Not very, exactly.
Not voluntarily.
So when we talk about, well, we've got information security policy and it's going to be supported by this framework, that many people in your organization. That many people in your organization. And when you say, oh, no one listens to me, no one communicates to me, no one understands me, oh, that's right, it's my marriage. That's because no one knows what you're talking about, and no one really wants to care.
The what's in it for me is not addressed. I think that's what you guys are all saying with culture.
Exactly.
Can we open to the floor? Because there's 15, 20 minutes left, I think. So we'll see what's there. The gentleman there in the middle. Can we get a microphone run over there? Is there... We have some runners, I think.
They're looking for microphones, all right. Morning, Benjamin. Morning. He's there, don't worry.
It's coming.
Thank you. Thank you for the speech. I had a simple question. Is it fair to say CMMC is a capacity maturity model, and you define current state versus target state with gaps, and on the other side 2701 is a management system which is not completely the same, and you defined not the target state versus the current state, but non-compliance issues. I wanted to clarify
Michael,
that.
you want to catch that one?
yes, there is a strong relationship between both, and today, since the regulators are naming both of them in Europe,
Yeah.
the ISO one, in the US is the CMMC one, the regulation will ask you, and this will be mandatory for some people to get fully compliant. For instance, if you take the CMMC one, if you take the gaps, this is based on the NIST, there are 110 points to achieve, and today it is accepted that you have a plan of action.
Yeah.
But each of the item has a quotation, a score, which is 1, 3, or 5 points. Today they have already decided since CMMC 2 that the 5 points item should not be in plan of actions. You have no choice, you have to get them. So if you have a contract and there is a flow down from the contracts coming from the United States Department of Defense, and they say, okay, you are CMMC level 3, then you have to do a flow down to all your subsidiaries, but also all your subcontractors and so on, depending on the information you are sharing with them. And in the end, the company you are working on will be contractually bounded to CMMC level 2, for instance.
So it's more prescriptive than the CMMI was.
Yes.
Yes. It's the idea, and in the end, it's part of the contract. But if you take the ISO part, and I will leave the response to Roman for the details. But in the end, if the NIST directive decides that an important entity or an essential operator needs to be compliant to that, they will put fine and management liability in the end. And then it will fall down as well to the subcontractors with the audit between the tier 1, the tier 2, the tier 3 until your company, and you will be bounded by contracts. Otherwise, your company will not be able to deliver anymore to the power supply company you are working for. Even if you are doing, I don't know, events, like the events we have today, you are a company based on event side, and you do an event for a telecom company or an industry chemical company, you will need to be compliant, maybe not level 3, maybe level 1, but you will need to be compliant. It will be part of the contracts.
Yeah.
Okay,
Roman,
thank
would
you.
you?
Yeah, and for ISO 27001, it's just a list of requirements, what should be there, yeah? But it does not say on what level it should be there. It says you need a policy, you need an information security policy. What should be exactly in that policy? Should it be just half a page long? Should it have 20 pages? Should it be a sophisticated document structure with many documents and on different levels? It does not say. It is not mentioned in the ISO 27001. However, if you go into much more detail, if you look in 27002 and 27003,
Three.
Yes. Exactly. 2 and 3, then you will find what to do exactly and how to do exactly. In 2 you will find the what, and in 3 you will find the how. Yeah? And this is what is making the link between 27001, which is staying independently from CMMC, and just via the 27002 and 3 are these are the how you say this circles which bind, which grab into another, yeah. And
It's like a Venn diagram, really.
Yeah,
so they all kind of fit together.
They make a chain to the CMMI, to the CMMC. Yeah? So exactly, you can validate with CMMC or whatever other maturity model how mature you are in
clauses
in
and
implementing a certain requirement.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
If you
Merci
want
beaucoup.
to be really clever, you could have an ISO 27001 ISMS, a NIST control set, and measure yourself against MMI. I've seen that done.
Interesting.
Right, we might be able to take
I
another
think
question.
we had the gentleman here up front was quite early, I think, in the piece. Yep. Did you get a microphone? Would you pass it on?
So, thank you.
There you go.
So you have to work for your lunch. There's no such thing as a free lunch.
First of all, many thanks for sharing your experience, which focused on the mistakes of auditees. We would like to hear about mistakes of auditors.
Mistakes of auditors.
Yeah.
I think Roman can
I have
add a
case-
few bit of flavor there. He's observed them.
I have a case in, I was auditing in Switzerland, a German, a Dutch company, actually a Dutch company.
Cannot be.
With a location in Switzerland. And there was a story where the company was in the building and they had a loading ramp inside inside a certain area, but that area was a public area, so everybody was could go in and out and drive with a car and whatever. Okay, so there is a loading ramp. Yeah, they had to upload some materials, and this loading ramp was used by smokers. And in order not to close the door and open the door, they just put some stone at the door so it was open. And I was asking, why is the door staying open? He said, why not? Okay, but people can, this is public area inside, yeah, and everybody can get in, even drive in, get through the inner door to your to your offices, and what? Yeah, and steal some information, some paper, maybe some material, some IT. He says, we are here in Switzerland. We don't steal so small items. If we steal something, then we steal big.
That's brilliant.
Unfortunately,
I like
that was 21,000 column 2013, and I was digging in the 2002 and 3 and was not finding any place where it states they need an alarm
Loading.
system. They need to monitor the physical security. It was not there, and luckily now in 2022 version it is there. Yeah? So nowadays, if I would audit, I would say, look here, there is an alarm system required. You have to install it. You have to lock the door. You have to monitor it. But yeah.
But good auditors, I think, are less predictable. Like walking around with your little checklist and the people knowing you're coming, they can start preparing. They overly prepare, you know. I have one auditor that works for me, and he chats up. He's actually gay, and he chats up the receptionist first. He looks really fresh, you know. But he's already gone past the iPad sign-in thing. He's already gone past because he had to go to the toilet. She said, just go in there. Then he goes, I've got a meeting with this CIO and I need to get this document printed. Can you please do that? He comes with a USB stick, gets it printed. She sticks it in the machine. He walks straight to the meeting. The CIO, the first question we ask him is, say, have you got your USB, you know, your portable media protected? Yes, nobody can print here from the USB sticks. Really? This is the first thing. I actually accidentally did it when I walked in Uganda, one of my client sites. I walked into an office of a risk manager. I had done the biometric thing, because that was over controls, you know, all biometric, way on steroids compared to Europe, Australia. We don't do biometrics when you walk into a building, really. Anyway, there I did, but that was downstairs. And when I got upstairs, I was not supposed to go to this high secure area. I pushed open the door. Now, I'm Dutch, I'm not that strong, right? But I'm pretty strong, but I just pushed open the door. There was a biometric thing there, but because the actual frame of the door was so weak, it was like a piece of aluminium or something, I just walk in there and I sat there waiting for him. And the first thing was, of course, how did you get in here? Well, I just walked in, you know, I just pushed a bit harder on the door. Well, you know, so auditors have to be a little bit creative, I think, doing some weird stuff, sometimes ask really stupid questions. I'm blonde, you know, I can ask all the stupid questions, so people just go, what? You need to startle people a little bit, and especially when you then link it to the benefit, just like you guys are saying. Yeah. Any further questions? I saw the... Oh, sorry. Yeah.
One more clarification concerning the difference between CMMC and the standard. Can we say the CMMC focusing on the result more than the standard? Because the standard always focuses on the system, on the enabler. It doesn't focus on the result.
The standard is just a management system. It's a system for managing documents and organizations. Yeah? And CMMC is something for measuring the maturity.
CMMC and the NIST is, let's accept it, a kind of checklist of the baseline elements you need to have. You need a password manager. You need to have an asset inventory. You need to have a good incident response. You need to encrypt. And this is a checklist. So
the American for example, how does consider the 27,000 does it,
they understand the relationship.
They don't.
Yeah, but how can he appreciate the level? Because in CMMC there are 5 levels.
Oh.
So can he appreciate the level? Which one? Is it the third? It is the fifth?
I joined the comment on my right. They don't accept it.
Don't accept it.
Just because even for us, PCB is starting today to implement some manner of certifying the people on CMMC, and it's not yet completely accepted by the US Department of Defense. They will do, it will happen, and PCB will be one of the first here to make it, but in the end, the auditors can only be US guys. You have the Patriot Act they have in the United States, and they have no choice. Only US citizens can accept the things. So ISO 27 certification is not certified by a US citizen, so it's not accepted at all.
It's not accepted.
So they accept that you implement an ISO thing and you map it to the CMMC, and in the end you prove them that you are CMMC compliant, but still they will send you a US auditor. If you are eligible for those kind of audit, because they will also accept for level 1 just self-assessments. For level 2, they will accept external companies to do the assessments every 3 years. And for the level 1, it's made by the US Department of Defense itself.
We have time for 2 more questions.
We've got
And then there's lunch where you can hammer these guys all the lunch break. Much more fun, and we can eat as well. There's a gentleman
with
here.
champagne, by the way.
Oh, really? It's a French one, the Brussels
Good
way.
morning. First of all, thank you for all the information you shared this morning. I work as a CISO for 2 companies. One working in the defense industry, one with customer in the defense industry, working directly with the DoD. First of all, how I will be impacted by the CMMC version 2, when it will happen, when it will be mandatory. And the second question, if I may, how is possible that a framework that will change and will impact globally the world have known only by the insider? How is possible? Thank you.
CMMC?
I do take it?
CMMC?
Okay,
Or maybe
well,
and then I will let you
you
complete.
give the
I will be
deadlines.
brief for the first
Go for it.
for the first part. So the when, if you go back to the question about the return on investment, you should already address it today. If you go on that way, it will be a useful help to go that way. And in the end, you know your business will need to comply. Let's start today. If you are a tier 1 company, having a big contract in the defense industry, if one of your customers is that customer, then in July 23, if you need date, in July 23, probably your contract will be in. If you are General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, of those kind of people, you will. So it will be mainly for the US companies. Probably not all of you are working for US companies at defense level, and they probably will have only US actors working on that. If you are a tier 2 working, in your case, it's more tier 2, working for a big US DoD program. I have my timeline here, but let's say in 24, 25, there is a high chance that you will get a contractual flow down. And there are some clauses. They have the Federal Acquisition Rule, the FAR rules, and the Supplemental for Defense, the DFARS rule. The 7012 will be part of your contract, then you need to do the assessment. And then the 21 will be there, and then you need to be certified before getting the contract. So 24, 25 for those kind of companies. If you are not working in defense, it can be probably later on, depending also on the scope. Will you certify your project, because you have only one project for the defense? Will you certify only for the CUI part in your company, because maybe you are not sharing a lot of important information with them? But if you are reducing the scope, you lose the opportunity of the return on investment for your complete company.
Yeah.
So that's the question.
I think you're talking about having a global type of framework, weren't you, at the end? And would we start seeing it created? We might get world peace beforehand. The big problem, and I find this a lot doing frameworks in places like the Middle East and even in places like Scandinavia, people want to be different. It's the same problems, but they just want to have their way of doing it. And I think we'll come to a point where 80% will be the same. I think we'll hit an 80-20 rule. 80% will be the same, and then there'll be that 20% will differ.
Variations in that.
But we'll see we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Thank you. Just before we go to the very final question, which hopefully is very brief, just one point of clarification. I started hearing some noises about, capability maturity model. This is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model certification. This is not CMM from the old days,
It's
from
the
the
old-
80s.
yeah.
I started hearing some
Yeah.
noises. Is that correct? So that's not what this is, right?
Cybersecurity maturity.
Yes. So just making that clear. The lady from
Hi.
Mexico.
Peru, actually.
Oh, Peru. There you go.
Yes, Peruvian. Mayra Reyes. Well, as I mentioned yesterday, I work for a big insurance company
Yeah.
based in Munich. We are currently reviewing our information security policy, and we hire a third party to do the gap analysis with our current policy against the main international standards. And because this topic is also about other cybersecurity frameworks, which others will you recommend to take into consideration for this gap analysis other than the one, especially the ISO 27001?
I'd probably give that one to Roman, because you were going to talk about gap analysis and the importance before going to audit, right? Do you want to tackle that one? Or, sorry.
Adrian,
Oh, okay.
you're an
Right.
expert.
All right.
So,
What are they?
so let's have a think. What are obviously the big ones we've discussed today are the ISO family, the maturity model, and the CMMC family. We've talked about the NIST CSF. Now, there are some interesting insurance guidelines and documents published by various regulators. So you could look at, I think it's still called FFIEC, which is the American federal regulator. The Bank of England has got policy guidance for information security that's driven out of NCSC.
SOC 2, maybe one? SOC 2, yeah.
SOC 2 is the audit against which service providers can be judged. If it's not SOC 2, you want ISA E3402 or its national equivalent. What else is there? There's there's the EU one.
Can I get it? I can get the question back. Sorry, I heard now you mentioned an insurance company in Munich.
Yeah.
So it's in Germany.
So BaFin.
There is a BaFin
Yeah.
who requires that you are compliant to VIT.
Yeah.
And there is a list of items, definite list of items, where the special requirements and also implementations are mentioned. That might be a legal obligation, even a legal obligation to go against these standards, the fight.
There are also 3 dimensions. You need to cover yourself. Okay, that's for your main role, your main work, and your subsidiaries. I don't know if you work also abroad with many offices in the world, but there is also the supplier flow down. And maybe your customer flow down. I don't know if you do cyber insurance in your company, but in the end, the idea is if you are needing to reflect what you do to different people, let's say you are an insurance company for the automotive sector, and in Germany, then you need TISAX. TISAX is what is widely spread into, it's a subset of ISO 27 that is lighter, and all depends on your goals.
Yeah. I think if you go into the gap analysis, you've got to benchmark yourself against 4 or 5 big things. That's what I was thinking about, like Bank of England and other big regulators who cover the insurance markets, because they have guidance. And then obviously, when you're right, then once you've got your benchmark, you actually have to develop what you need to take into account. Yeah. So I think there's a couple of steps in the process that maybe we need to enumerate offline.
And you can probably map most of them together. You have risk management, asset management, people management, and those kind. Then in the end, you cover them all.
Yeah.
But
Thank you. Thank you for those.
When you.
Those.
They don't have a really good collection of art, do they? And a very big statue outside.
They resell it, and then they
okay, all right. 'Cause if it was them, I still know they're old CISOs.
Sounds like great food for thought over lunch as well, and food for chats. Could I, if possible, a one-liner spontaneously that you would like to give these people when they go off there into their merry ways?
Yeah. First, one-liner for me: if you are doing an audit, first be on site and open your eyes, and second, speak to the manager.
Great. That was Roman's famous words.
So many things. One-liner, come back to us if you have additional questions.
Thanks. Adrian?
I think my one-liner is, look, frameworks are good, just use them carefully.
Great, fantastic. Give it up for this incredible panel.
Thank you, Richard.